Joe Biden is showing more and more what a grumpy old man he is. Watch.
Do you still believe he's a threat to democracy?
I think what he did was a genuine threat to democracy. My being the oldest president, I know more world leaders than any one of you ever met in your whole goddamn life.
Biden continues with the ridiculous rhetoric that Trump constitutes a threat to democracy. He does not seem to realize that not only is it not 2020, it's not even 2024 anymore. Those tired old days of Trump being a threat to democracy are long past, and no one actually believes it anymore, not even Joe. And then he goes on, even more, getting tetchy with journalists for no apparent reason. I think poor old Joe still thinks he could have won the election, and now the reality that he will soon be out of the White House is hitting home. And then we get to Joe signing a whole stream of totally worthless executive orders, as if at this late stage they actually mean anything.
And I see it just came over that Biden has banned all oil and gas drilling across 625 million acres of U.S. coastal territory. It's ridiculous. I'll unban it immediately. I will unban it. I have the right to unban it immediately. What's he doing? Why is he doing?
Biden is now signing a flurry of executive orders, including this one. The fact is, the ink will barely be dry on his signature before this and a slew of other executive orders that petulant Joe has pushed out even have time to be digested, never mind acted on. And then we get the obligatory MSNBC hissy fit.
Let's just put a finer point on it. This is sickening. This is sickening. I am sick. Peter Navarro, Jeffrey Clark, the people that went to the Capitol to take up arms against the United States government because the the president of the United States at the time lied to them, because that's what happened. Those people are not patriots. What Donald Trump did last night is a disgrace to this country. It's a disgrace to the Constitution. And to Alicia's point, the fact that they didn't tell anyone about it lets you know that they knew what they were doing was untoward.
If you enjoy this sort of content, please like, share and subscribe. And here you have in MSNBC complaining about the screening of the premiere of The Eastman Dilemma, Lawfare or Justice. It is amazing how one-sided their commentary is. This screening is by a president-elect in his own home and is a reasonable subject worth examining. Contrast this with a screening of another premiere movie, this time by a sitting Democrat president, where it was screened at the White House, not a private residence. The president, Woodrow Wilson. The movie, Birth of a Nation, a racist diatribe that extolled the virtues of the Ku Klux Klan, making them out to be the saviors of white morality and white women's virtue. No mention of that by the Democrats. Funny that. Then we have the certification of the election results, and the mainstream media have not taken it well.
A joint session of Congress has just certified the results of the 2024 election and Donald Trump's return to the White House. Vice President Kamala Harris, serving in her role as president of the Senate, presided over the counting of the electoral votes, which, of course, certifies her election loss.
Today's process stood in stark contrast to what we saw 4 years ago when a mob attacked the Capitol on January 6th in an attempt to overturn Trump's 2020 election loss. Multiple people died, including officers, following that incident, and hundreds of arrests and convictions followed.
NBC could not help themselves. Of course, they had to go back to January 6, 2021. You have the usual misleading dogma suggesting that police officers died as a result of January 6th on the day. In reality, only one person died on the day, and that was a protester who was shot. But of course, it wouldn't be the mainstream media if they weren't working as Team Democrat agenda. Now take CBS.
President-elect Donald Trump's victory in the 2024 presidential election has been officially certified by Congress. The counting of the electoral votes happened during a joint session of the Senate and House, which was officiated by Trump's opponent and current president of the Senate, Vice President Kamala Harris. CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killion joins us now from Capitol Hill. Nicole, good to see you. How did the certification process go? Were there any hiccups?
There really weren't. It was relatively uneventful, but eventful from the standpoint that this was the first time we have witnessed that electoral vote count since January 6, 2021, where, of course, it was a much different scene and, of course, where that process was interrupted when a mob descended here on the U.S. Capitol and was here for hours.
CBS showed that they didn't want NBC to be the only ones to run the Democrat lines, or should that be lies? They talk about certification, but then of course they go back to January 6, 2021. This is a matter of clear Democrat talking points. How great the Democrats are and how bad Trump and the Republicans are and were. It really is pathetic. Now let's go to the ABC.
We can't forget that 1,500 people were charged. 667 of them went to prison, while about 500 others are still awaiting their day in court or sentence. People died that day. There's still the reality of what happened, but also how this new administration wants to change how we all see what actually happened that day.
Here to complete things for the three historic main networks is the ABC, clearly not wanting to be left out. Once again, the narrative is pushed about January 6, 2021, and the talk about Republicans wanting to change the narrative. Of course the Republicans want to change the narrative. The narrative that has been pushed by the mainstream media is nonsense. It was not an insurrection, and all Trump wanted was a peaceful protest. But the mainstream media, well, maybe not so mainstream these days, with podcasts and X being far more mainstream, along with the collapsing ratings of the legacy media. But here we go. ABC continues pushing the violence narrative.
Well, also 140 Capitol police officers were injured that day, Kira, brutalized. I mean, many still have PTSD from what they've encountered that day. I've talked to them, and they'll tell you that directly. To your point on the rewriting of history of January 6th, I mean, we've been conducting what is now more than a year-long of an investigation into efforts by Donald Trump and his allies to rewrite the history of January 6th, to rebrand it, to say that those who are currently serving prison time for January 6th are quote-unquote hostages or political prisoners, as the president-elect has done repeatedly and did on the campaign trail. Also, to downplay the violence that we saw that day.
Here the ABC goes on and on about violence, beating up their story to within an inch of its life, desperately pushing to keep a story going that they think somehow, 4 years on, remains relevant and of interest. Then, just to reinforce that this is a Democrat narrative, here is Amy Klobuchar.
Forever, with the police officers dying, so many people hurt. We literally had cops that couldn't get at their riot gear. It was locked on a bus. A 4-hour delay to call in the National Guard because of some rule that had been in place that created a phone tree.
Klobuchar goes on about violence, but then continues with another assertion. She talks about a 4-hour delay for the National Guard, talking about the delay being due to a phone tree. Here's the reality. Trump pushed Pelosi, who as House Speaker had responsibility for security at the Capitol. Pelosi did not do her job and failed in terms of Capitol security. Although the Democrats keep pushing their narrative, the reality is that Pelosi was responsible for the security failure at the Capitol on January 6. Don't take it from me. Here it is, from her own mouth.
We have responsibility, Terry. We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff that should we call the Capitol Police? I mean the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient resources.
That is not a question of how they had been. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for.
Note that Pelosi said that she had responsibility. She asked why the National Guard weren't there to begin with. She said she takes responsibility for not having them being prepared for more. Amazing how after all of this, the Democrats sweep this under the rug and keep on with their narrative. After all of this nonsense, let's get some reality from Ukrainian President Zelensky about Trump's election.
He was stronger. He was much more stronger than Kamala Harris, Biden first, and then Kamala Harris, yes? He showed that he can intellectually and physically. It was an important point to show that if you want to have a strong country, you have to be strong. And he was strong. And this number of rallies, what I said, is not a simple thing. He showed that he can. He is strong. So he doesn't have any questions with this age and etc. Nothing. He is young. He is young here, and his brains work.
Zelensky states what is and always was obvious to anyone with half a brain. Trump was always cogent and coherent. More than that, Trump has had remarkable energy during the campaign and totally blew 20-year younger Harris out of the water in terms of energy on the campaign trail. Trump, of course, showed resilience, toughness, and with the attempted assassination, remarkable bravery, which are all things really you want within the leader of a country, don't you? And they are things that have been notably missing over the last 4 years. Thanks for watching.